Okay, so you probably saw the title and thumbnail of this video and you were ready to come in and fire off some angry comments at me for disparaging your favorite rookies this year. But I want this video to be more of a conversation rather than me just saying that these guys are bad, they're overrated, they're probably busts. That's not how I view these guys, but I do believe I am lower on these players than the overall consensus, and I want to explain why. So let's start with the headliner of the video, Quinshon Judkins, a consensus top 5 running back in this class, top 3 even for some people, and I can't sit here and say that I really have him any much lower than that either. He is my pre-draft RB5, but I think that he's a lot closer to Cam Scadaboo, Devin Neal, Dylan Sampson, Ollie Gordon, etc. than he is Omarion Hampton and Travion Henderson, who are in my top 3. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, my marker system just doesn't really love Quinshon Judkins. He's currently sitting at 6 out of 12 markers hit for the running back position, which is in a massive mess of players who all basically did the same thing statistically at the collegiate level with very similar production, size, and athleticism to a bunch of other guys in this class. That in and of itself is not a bad thing, especially when he's going to get much better draft capital than basically everybody else around him, and that will separate him from this pack after the draft. But I also think that it's important to note that he's not significantly separating himself analytically from a bunch of other guys. We're just separating him based on film and maybe a little bit from helmet scouting as well. And that leads me into my second reason for being lower on Judkins than consensus, the film. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm an expert film watcher. I am most definitely not. That's why I lean toward the analytics, because that's what I'm good at. But I know some things to look for because I've just been watching football my whole life. And when I watch Quinshon Judkins, I see a primarily 2-down runner who greatly embraces contact, but doesn't really do all that much after the contact. He doesn't create much on his own outside of what's blocked for him. And I see a player who can catch the ball, but really wasn't used as a pass-catching weapon, more often as a safety blanket for Will Howard to just check it down to in case of emergencies. Too often, I'm watching his film, and he sprints through this massive hole for 10 yards, gets the first down, but gets tackled by the first guy who gets to him. It just happens to be 10 yards downfield, like I said, because his offensive line blocked that hole for him. He's able to consistently gain 4, 5, 6 yards easily behind that Ohio State O-line, but then that's kind of it, really. He does have breakaway runs occasionally, but again, the line creates that massive hole for him to shoot through, and then his speed is just decent enough that he just outruns everybody else. He's a violent runner, he's a short yardage specialist, he's a first down chain mover, but I'm not really sure that he's anything significantly more than that. And Pro Football Focus metrics back all of this up too. In fact, I tweeted this out the other day that among the 31 running backs who attended the NFL Combine this year, Judkins ranks 4th in career carries, 15th in career breakaway runs per attempt, 11th in career missed tackles per attempt, 13th in career first downs per attempt, 26th in career yards after contact per attempt, 22nd in career yards per route run, and 23rd in career targets per route run. And his numbers really aren't any better when you look at his best season metrics for all of those same stats too. So over his entire career at both Ole Miss and Ohio State, plus taking into account his best performances as a freshman or at Ohio State, he didn't grade as a top 10 running back in any of those film-based metrics except total carries. So his usage was high, his efficiency was kind of average, and his best numbers indicate exactly what he is on tape. A violent runner, a short yardage specialist, and a first down chain mover, but nothing significantly more. Landing spot is already a massive factor for a lot of rookies and how they're going to be ranked, but I think it's also going to be the most impactful for Quinshon Judkins to see if he really is going to be able to be a 3-down back or not at the NFL level. His range of outcomes could be anywhere from Brian Robinson to Najee Harris to David Montgomery in Chicago or in Detroit. I think most people want to believe that he can be like Josh Jacobs or Jonathan Taylor or what we thought Breece Hall could be, but I just don't think that his profile is that type of player. If he lands in Dallas or Denver or Vegas as that kind of 3-down bell cow, then fantastic. But I still think that the upside is more Najee Harris or maybe Chicago Bears David Montgomery. But if he lands with the Giants, I think it's going to be him and Tyrone Tracy in that backfield. Or Chicago, it's going to be him and DeAndre Swift. In Cincy, it's going to be him and Chase Brown. Those landing spots are where the Brian Robinson comps come from, or maybe at best Lions David Montgomery comparisons if he's in a great offense with a lot of touchdown upside. Again, I want to stress that he is my RB5 in the class right now, and I'd be happy to draft him in round 1 of rookie drafts, but I also want to temper expectations because I think more people view him as a potential perennial fantasy RB1, and I just don't think that that's the case. I think he's a very fine RB2 with RB3 downside because of a lack of overall receiving work, but also RB1 upside in high touchdown seasons. Now, switching to quarterback, this may come at no surprise if you are plugged into NFL draft content because now it seems like it's become cool to hate on this player, but I am really just not a fan of Shedeur Sanders, and I have what I believe to be some pretty solid data to back that up, rather than just saying that his film might not translate because his release is longer and his arm velocity is kind of meh, but hey, at least the kid's accurate, all of which are very true, by the way, when you watch his film. But if you've been watching this channel, you would be familiar with my marker system, which up until now, I only really had 4 running backs and wide receivers. And then this year, I added tight ends and quarterbacks. And I also integrated those Pro Football Focus metrics into the quarterback markers too. Well, a pattern does emerge from analyzing the quarterbacks who did and did not hit on at least 50% of my 10 PFF markers. If you hit on over 50% of my PFF markers and you are a first-round quarterback, this generally has been a very good thing. This is where Pat Mahomes is, Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jared Goff, Deshaun Watson, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, many other good quarterbacks have found themselves since 2016. Now, if you are under 50% and you are a first-round quarterback, that is where things start to get a little bit dicey. You get a lot more variance in terms of actual hit rate, and the bust rate increases tremendously. But I did find one separator for fantasy success is that if you're in this grouping and you rushed for over 1,000 yards in your collegiate career, your fantasy success increases a ton. This is where Lamar Jackson is, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Bo Nix, Justin Fields, even Daniel Jones is on this list, and he's had a top 12 fantasy season and multiple top 24 seasons. But if you didn't rush for 1,000 yards in college, meaning you're more of a pocket passer and you're not even really that good at that, then your hit rate really plummets if you are a first-round pick. This entire list since 2015 goes Jameis Winston, Paxton Lynch, Mitch Trubisky, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, Dwayne Haskins, Kenny Pickett, and most likely Shedeur Sanders this year. That is a terrible list to be associated with as a rookie quarterback, but I think it shines a very bright light on the fact that Shedeur Sanders just does not have much upside in the NFL because he projects as a more game manager who might struggle against better and faster defenses than what he's used to playing at Colorado. In the right situation, Shedeur Sanders can be good, just like Sam Darnold was excellent in the perfect system with fantastic weapons last year. But if he truly is a top 10 or top 15 pick, where is he going to go that he lands into a very similar situation? Maybe Cleveland is like his best odds in that kind of range, because I don't think it's going to work well in New York or Vegas or New Orleans or Indy. Then you're hoping maybe he falls to Pittsburgh or maybe goes to the Rams to back up Matthew Stafford for a year or two, but then he's at least in a Sean McVay system throwing to Puka Nacua. But it just gets really, really dicey, and that's why Shedeur Sanders is my QB3 behind Jackson Dart, because I believe that Dart is just a higher upside passer and has the mobility to add something there for fantasy too. Now, I'm not 100% out on Shedeur Sanders, but I'm really just not into him either. All right, now on to wide receivers. And you guys had to know that I'd at least have to talk about Matthew Golden, right? I am an analytics guy, and Matthew Golden is not an analytical darling, to say the least. He does not have a 30% breakout age, which the hit rate for those receivers, even in the first round, is very low. It's basically Jalen Waddle and Jackson Smith-Njigba. Both of them at least played with other elite NFL wide receivers, so there is some context there that Golden doesn't have at either school. He just legitimately did not produce enough. He does not have a season above 2 yards per team pass attempt. Again, another very low hit rate for first round wide receivers. He does not have a big market share of yards or touchdowns or even really targets for that matter. But hey, the dude runs fast, so at least there's that. And again, I'm not out on Matthew Golden. I want that to be known that I see the same upside that everybody else sees. I've watched his film. I even tweeted out that Golden's film is so good for someone with such a bad analytical profile. I have watched the tape. But there are also some things that I really just struggle to fully reconcile with his profile. Number one, historically, running a sub 4.3 has generally been a bad thing when translating to fantasy football success. Not just because it's bad to be fast, that is definitely not the case, but generally, when you're that fast, you usually get typecasted into being just this one-trick pony, a vertical threat only. And if you're only running deep constantly with no real other ways to get the ball, then you become so extraordinarily boom bust that it's impossible to rely on you for fantasy. Being that fast also means that your route running might be subpar because your college team also just told you to run downfield because no one can stop you, and you had great success with that in college, but you never develop into a more complete wide receiver. He is also awful against man coverage. In 2023 at Houston, he averaged 0.73 yards per route run against man, and in 2024 at Texas, he did improve that number to 0.92 yards per route run against man coverage. Reception perception backs this up too, as he's in the 44th percentile in success versus man compared to 77th percentile in success versus zone. He's also in the 50th percentile in success against press, so he's also not great there either. And people are always pointing out to me that his second half of the year was way better at Texas, so we should just look at that. And I think only looking at that second half of the year is a mistake, not to mention that it's also kind of misleading. A, if he's that good, why didn't he produce at Houston? Tank Dell put up 1,400 yards and 17 touchdowns in 2022 at Houston, and in 2023, Golden was just third on the team in receiving yards as a sophomore with like 500 or 600 yards. If he's actually that good, why after he transferred to Texas, did Texas believe that Isaiah Bond was better and had him as their wide receiver one for half the year in 2024 over Matthew Golden? And then you actually look at his second half compared to his first half, and this is what the hype is about. 2 100-yard games, but we also have 3 for 64, 2 for 21, 3 for 73, 2 for 49. And even though he wrecked Georgia and Arizona State in the playoffs, those are his 2 100-yard games, he was shut down by Ohio State in the championship for 2 catches for 51 yards. His yards per reception did increase in the second half, going up from 1.5 to 2.8 over the 2 halves of the season, but that's really just because he connected on 1 extra deep ball that he wasn't connecting on to start the year. In the first 8 games, he had only 1 week where his longest reception was over 40 yards and 3 weeks over 30 yards. But in the final 8 games, he had 4 weeks with his longest reception being over 40 yards, 6 over 30 yards. So he literally caught 1 extra deep ball per game in the second half that he wasn't catching in the first half. And then my final hesitation is his poor grade in my PFF marker system, which I created specifically for players like Matthew Golden, where his seasonal production is bad, but I'm trying to see if their per route production is better than what it seems. This is where we identify the Lad McConkeys, the Puka Nakuas, the Deontay Johnsons of the world who greatly outperform my marker system with per route PFF metrics. Well, Golden not only hits on just 4 of my 14 markers, but he also only hits on 4 of my 16 PFF markers. So that shows that he's not good with seasonal production, and also isn't that good on a per route production either. In fact, since 2018, here's every first and second round wide receiver who has had under 5 markers hit in both of my markers and PFF markers. Dante Pettis, Van Jefferson, KJ Hamler, Henry Ruggs, Alec Pierce, Jaden Reed, Jalen Polk, and Ricky Pearsall. So can he be good in the NFL? Sure, he definitely can be good, but I think you need to realize and accept that you are betting on an outlier. He doesn't have the college production. He really doesn't have the consistent body of film either to prove that he even is a good bet in the NFL to take in the first round of rookie drafts. Even if he is a first round NFL draft pick, I am not touching him in the first round of rookie drafts. Early to mid-second, sure, I'll probably take the shot on him, but if that's where I have him ranked, I know that I'm never going to get him there because somebody's going to see the speed, they're going to see the first round draft capital, they're going to maybe see even a good landing spot like Dallas or Buffalo or Washington, and they're going to draft him much higher than I believe that he should actually go. And the final player that I think warrants a conversation for being overrated, and I actually do think is overrated, is Elic Ayomanor. Now listen, I tried, man. I tried to buy into Elic because I've seen the hype on Twitter. He's actually grading out as the pre-draft wide receiver 5 to 6 in my marker system, and I'm sure he's even going to get solid day 2 draft capital as well. But man, I just can't do it. When I was watching Elic's film, there were several times where I was just ready to call it quits because I was so bored. And maybe I just need to blame this on Stanford's offense, but oh my goodness, man. The number of curl routes, hitches, short in routes. It was maddening to watch. And then the few times that they did throw it to him deep, he did well, but it didn't seem very natural. I think he needs a lot of work to develop his route running. And overall, I just don't understand the hype around Elic Ayomanor. And then his numbers in my marker system do also kind of back that up. Like I said, he is currently like the wide receiver 5-ish in my markers pre-draft, but he is awful when it comes to PFF numbers. In fact, he's actually a candidate for a very bad bust list at wide receiver. A list where if you're a first or second round wide receiver and you have more than half as many PFF markers hit as not my markers hit, meaning that you probably had good seasonal production, but the per route numbers indicate that your production might be very volume-based, it might be system-based, or it's otherwise just really not because of you. That is the list that Elic might find himself on this year. Since 2019, this list goes N'Keal Harry, DK Metcalf, Jalen Reagor, Denzel Mims, Michael Pittman, Terrace Marshall, Tyquan Thornton, Jonathan Mingo, Brian Thomas Jr., Xavier Legette, and Adonai Mitchell. And if you went out to incorporate all day 1 and day 2 wide receivers, so rounds 1 through 3, not just rounds 1 through 2, you would also add in Jalen Hyatt to this list as well. So overall, not a very good list to be on. Even if we do have a couple of fantasy hits like DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman, and most notably Brian Thomas Jr. from last year, but those guys also played with some insane wide receiver talents in college too. Metcalf was with AJ Brown. Pittman was with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Drake London, and BTJ was, of course, with Malik Neighbors. Most everybody else on this list, the ones that were really the biggest busts, were really by themselves in college. N'Keal Harry was by himself. Denzel Mims was by himself. Jalen Reagor was by himself. Terrace Marshall had an entire season by himself at LSU without Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Jonathan Mingo was pretty much by himself too, only competing with Elijah Moore for a couple of years. Xavier Legette was by himself, and guess what? Elic Ayomanor has been by himself for the entirety of his career at Stanford. I understand that we're really grasping at straws for wide receivers in this class that we can draft in the second and third rounds of rookie drafts because this class isn't really that great overall. And I understand why people have maybe gravitated towards Elic to being one of those guys, but I am just out on Elic Ayomanor. I'd much rather have Trey Harris, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Knoll, Jalen Royals, and Kyle Williams, not to mention that he might just find himself in a rookie ADP range where there's another handful of running backs that I'd probably just prefer too. So where with the other 3 guys on this list, I could see myself still drafting them in rookie drafts, Judkins especially, I don't think that there's a possibility where I draft Elic Ayomanor in any league unless he finds himself in the late 3rd or even 4th round of my rookie drafts, which is most likely just not happening. But if you are curious as to which players that I'm looking to draft, especially later in rookie drafts, you can check out this video right up here.